Enjoy the show! Hey, my name's John, and have you ever found yourself too overwhelmed by today's games and wanted to go back to the quirky and seemingly strange titles of the early 2010s? I know. There's a ton of retro games out there that fit this category, even more so once you count the ones from the early 1980s. But I want to showcase a game that I think at its core defines indie development and that sometimes simplicity really is all you need. And of course the game I'm talking about today is titled VVVVV, which I'm going to refer to as V from now on to save both your ears and also my sanity. To be honest, from first impressions, V looks nothing more than a super bare-bones indie platformer, especially if you're coming from games such as Celeste or Hollow Knight. It honestly looks about as night and day compared to those two. A stripped-down version of a platformer, one that's so unfiltered and raw that I could honestly not blame you if you were uninterested, because that's how I first felt playing this. But beneath all of this lies a game that showcases what it means to develop games in the first place, and how we shouldn't judge a game based on just how it looks. So after a playthrough, I wanted to share my thoughts about V and dive into a little bit about why it's worth at least talking about. This is my experience with VVVVV. To say that V is a unique game is an understatement, but to say that it's anything but simple is pretty much the opposite. It's a retro-style platformer, and a game created by Terry Canavan. And in this game, you control someone named Captain Viridian, who after having his ship stranded in an alternate dimension, has to rescue 5 of his other color-named crewmates. And the real kicker is that unlike other typical platformer, V's unique mechanic is where instead of jumping, you can reverse gravity whenever, allowing you to flip between walking on the floor and the ceiling. And what sets it apart is that besides walking, it's the only thing you can do, and that's something every level in the game is based around. It's non-linear and features both a wider world and sections that have their own unique theme to them, such as auto-scrolling or conveyor belt sections. It also features pixel art graphics and a chiptune soundtrack, giving it a bit more of a retro feel. It was made by the same person that made Super Hexagon, another eerily similar game in terms of both how simple they are, but also how they look. And this to me showcases just how raw game development is at its core, in that it's not about having the most complicated mechanics or the prettiest game, but rather having good solid mechanics, which is the foundations of any good game. For me, the game was extremely simple to pick up. You move left and right and you flip gravity. As I came through playing this game and dying what felt like hundreds of times, I came to appreciate what it had offered, even if I honestly will admit being more annoyed than anything else at a certain point. And for that, I think it's worth looking into what the game does well, and how it aged. I wasn't kidding when I mentioned some games are pretty overwhelming nowadays. Think back to some of the most popular titles: Fortnite, Apex, League, Valorant. All of them are, while not the most complicated games out there, way more mechanically inclined than some of the early retro games found in arcades. And that to me is the foundation of what makes V a standout. And I mean that in both ways. The controls are straightforward. You move left, right, and flip. The minimalist approach makes the game extremely easy to pick up for just about anybody. But what sets V apart from honestly just a more early alpha game is how well some of the levels are designed. Remember how earlier I was talking about how each section had a specific theme to them? That's what makes V so fun to play at times, the times when this game does gel together, making you think less about what this game doesn't offer and more about how you can just solve this level with what you can do. And to me, there are two standout sections: the auto-scrolling and the warp one. Now, for the auto-scrolling, there isn't that much to talk about, other than the fact that the overall mechanic itself works well, and it's a solid but well-created section with good levels. But in warping, every time you go towards the end of the scroll in another level, you're immediately put on the other side of it. Now, normally in most games, because gravity is always flowing down, you're going to be playing with this mechanic in 3 directions: left, right, and down. But because V allows you to flip upside down, you're all of a sudden allowed to create these really creative and fantastic levels that, even if they weren't hard, was at least amazing to play through. Just take a look at this. And the final level, where you're combining mechanics from every section together, really cements just how much this game can innovate from having so little. If you're a fan of these retro style feel games, I'm sure V will be right up your alley. And at a low price of only $5 on Steam, it's really one of the cheapest games out there. It also comes with its own in-game level editor, where you can not only create new levels, but also play community-made ones. One thing to note is that V is extremely short, clocking in at about an hour during my first playthrough. It's also at times very unclear and confusing where you're supposed to go, and for a first-time player, it wasn't surprising to find yourself being lost and wandering around the overworld, not knowing what to do next. And it lacks some of the same depth and polish that really modern platformers have. And while I did give praise to the level designs of Warp and the auto-scrolling sections, other ones such as the conveyor belt can really sour your mood with how poorly they're played out, even if by design they can be a lot of fun. If you're into other simple games such as Super Hexagon or even Jump King, you might find a lot to love about V. If you're a fan of indie games or just looking for something short and wacky, I would really recommend giving this a try, where you can find some really raw and pure platforming experience that you just can't find anywhere else. So, as always, thanks for watching, until next time.